The air in the laboratory of the Eleran research vessel crackled with energy. Nadia's delicate purple fingers traced the intricate patterns on the ancient artifact she'd discovered on the uninhabited moon they were surveying. As the lead botanist for the expedition, she was more accustomed to categorizing alien flora than studying mysterious relics. But something about this object, a small, octagonal device with swirling symbols, had captured her attention. Just a few more scans, she murmured to herself, her iridescent eyes reflecting the soft glow of the device as she adjusted her instruments. Her colleagues had already returned to their quarters, leaving her alone with her discovery. The solitude didn't bother her. Nadia had always preferred the quiet company of plants and scientific puzzles to the social complexities of her own kind. When the device suddenly pulsed with light, Nadia barely had time to gasp before the laboratory around her dissolved into shimmering particles of light. Her stomach lurched as the sensation of falling overtook her, and then impact. She landed with a soft thud on a cold metal floor, disoriented and breathless. The air here was different, drier, with unfamiliar scents that made her sensitive nostrils flare. As her vision cleared, she found herself staring up at a startled face unlike any she'd seen before. Pink-beige skin, dark hair cut short, and wide eyes the color of Alora's oceans. What the? Lieutenant Ethan Cross dropped the tablet he'd been reviewing, instinctively reaching for the emergency alert on his wrist communicator before freezing mid-motion. The intruder in his private quarters didn't appear threatening. In fact, she looked as shocked as he felt. "Identify yourself," he demanded, voice steady despite his racing heart. The lunar outpost was supposed to be secure. How had this person bypassed all their systems? Nadia clutched the transportation device to her chest, her universal translator struggling to process this new language. "I am Nadia, botanical researcher of Elora. This is not my ship." She slowly rose to her feet, her movements careful and deliberate. "This device, I believe it has transported me somewhere unexpected." Ethan's training told him to sound the alarm immediately. An unauthorized alien presence on the outpost was a serious security breach. But something in her expression, a mixture of confusion and fear that transcended species differences, made him hesitate. "You're on Earth Alliance Lunar Outpost Gamma," he explained, lowering his hand from the communicator. "I'm Lieutenant Ethan Cross." Nadia's translator finally aligned with his speech patterns. "Earth? But that's—" Her voice trailed off as she glanced at the small viewport in his quarters, revealing the stark lunar landscape, and beyond it, the blue-green sphere of Earth hanging in the blackness. "Oh, that's very far from Elora. How did you get in here?" Ethan asked, his curiosity momentarily overriding protocol. Nadia held up the octagonal device, which now appeared dormant. "This artifact, I was studying it. It must be some kind of transportation technology, far more advanced than anything my people possess." Ethan knew he should report this immediately. Instead, he found himself asking, "Is it broken?" "I'm not certain," Nadia replied, examining the now dim symbols. "But I think—" Yes, some components seemed damaged from the transfer. Their eyes met across the room, two beings from different worlds caught in an impossible moment. "I should report this," Ethan said more to himself than to her. "Please," Nadia said softly, her voice carrying a gentle musical quality. "If your people are anything like mine, they might react poorly to an unexpected visitor. I mean, no harm. I just need time to repair this and return home." Ethan hesitated, then made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "You have until morning," he said. "Then we figure this out properly." Morning on the lunar outpost came artificially, with lights gradually brightening to simulate dawn. Ethan awoke on the small couch in his quarters, momentarily disoriented before remembering the events of the previous night. He sat up quickly, eyes darting to where he'd left Nadia working at his desk. She was still there, her slender purple form hunched over the disassembled transportation device. Scattered around her were improvised tools, parts repurposed from Ethan's personal electronics that he'd reluctantly allowed her to cannibalize. "Have you been working all night?" he asked, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Nadia looked up, her iridescent eyes showing signs of fatigue. "Your cycle of night is shorter than what I'm accustomed to on Elora. The technology in this device is complex, ancient, yet somehow more advanced than anything my civilization has developed." Ethan checked the time and frowned. "My shift starts in 30 minutes. I can't leave you alone in here. and I definitely can't bring you with me. I understand your concern, Nadia said, carefully setting down the delicate component she'd been examining. Your superiors would question my presence. Ethan paced the small room, weighing his options. I could report a mild illness, request a day of medical leave. You would do that? Risk your position to help me? The surprise in her voice was evident. He paused, wondering the same thing himself. Let's just say I'm curious. We've always speculated about intelligent life beyond our solar system, but we've never had proof. His lips curved into a slight smile, and now that proof is sitting at my desk taking apart my spare tablet. I apologize for the disassembly, Nadia said, her purple fingers gesturing to the scattered components. I needed specific materials to repair the dimensional calibrator. Ethan sent a brief message to his commanding officer, requesting medical leave, citing symptoms that would keep him confined to quarters, but wouldn't trigger a mandatory visit from medical staff. With that handled, he approached Nadia's workstation cautiously. So, while we wait for approval, maybe you could tell me about Elora. The next hours passed in a fascinating exchange of information. Nadia described her homeworld, a planet with 3 moons, vast oceans of violet water, and forests of crystalline vegetation that captured and refracted sunlight in spectacular displays. Her people, the Elorans, lived in harmony with their environment. Their advanced biotechnology developed to work with nature rather than exploit it. In turn, Ethan explained humanity's complicated relationship with Earth and their expansion to lunar and Martian colonies. He showed Nadia images and videos on his remaining functional tablet, watching her reactions with amusement as she marveled at Earth's diverse ecosystems. Your oceans contain such variety, she exclaimed, studying footage of a coral reef. On Elora, our seas are dominated by single-celled organisms that form collective structures. Nothing like these fish? Fish, yes, Ethan confirmed. And those are coral, actually tiny animals that build these structures over centuries. When Nadia's stomach produced a curious rumbling sound, Ethan realized she hadn't eaten since her arrival. He cautiously offered her some of his rations, unsure if they would be compatible with her biology. Our scientists suggest that life throughout the universe likely shares certain basic chemical structures, Nadia said, carefully examining the food packet. She sniffed it curiously before taking a tentative taste. Her expression brightened. This is surprisingly pleasant. Their conversation continued as they shared the meal, moving from scientific exchange to more personal topics. Ethan described growing up in the crowded arcologies of Earth before joining the Alliance. Nadia spoke of her childhood in the floating cities of Elora, and how she'd chosen to become a botanist to help preserve her planet's unique flora. As the hours passed, the initial strangeness of their situation began to fade. Despite their obvious physical differences, her purple skin and slightly luminescent eyes, his comparatively sturdy human frame, they found unexpected common ground. Both were scientists at heart, explorers dedicated to understanding the universe around them. When Ethan played some music from his personal collection, Nadia's reaction was one of pure delight. The concept of creating patterns of sound solely for emotional effect was apparently novel to her species, whose communication included subtle harmonic elements but nothing resembling human music. It creates feelings without information, she marveled, eyes closed as she listened to a classical piece. How fascinating. Ethan watched her, struck by how her alien features now seemed less strange and more beautiful in their own unique way. Their accidental meeting was becoming something neither of them had anticipated, a bridge between 2 entirely different worlds. A week had passed since Nadia's unexpected arrival, and Ethan's small quarters had been transformed. The space that once reflected military minimalism now housed an improvised laboratory where Nadia worked diligently on her transportation device, plants from the outpost's hydroponics bay, borrowed by Ethan during his shifts, added touches of green life to the sterile environment. Ethan had managed to maintain the illusion that nothing unusual was happening in his quarters, taking regular shifts while ensuring Nadia remained undiscovered. He'd also smuggled in additional supplies, equipment, and even a few luxury items to make her stay more comfortable. Your Earth chocolate is remarkable, Nadia commented, savoring a small piece from the emergency stash Ethan kept hidden in his quarters. We have nothing comparable on Elora. Our sweets derive primarily from crystallized plant nectar. Ethan smiled, enjoying her discovery of human pleasures almost as much as experiencing them himself. If you think that's good, wait until you try ice cream, if I can ever figure out how to smuggle some in. He had returned from his shift to find Nadia experimenting with a new approach to repairing her device. Her dedicated focus reminded him of the botanist she was, patient, methodical, and nurturing. She had explained that on Elora, botanical science was among the most prestigious fields, as their civilization depended on plant-based technologies for everything from medicine to computing. "I've made progress," she announced, setting down her tools and stretching her slender arms above her head. "The dimensional coordinates are becoming clearer, but the power source remains problematic." "That's great news," Ethan said, ignoring the unexpected pang he felt at the thought of her eventual departure. He'd grown accustomed to returning to his quarters and finding her there, to their long conversations about their respective worlds, to the way her musical laughter brightened the artificial environment of the lunar base. As the days had passed, physical boundaries between them had gradually dissolved. Initially careful to maintain distance, they now moved comfortably in each other's space. Ethan had shown Nadia how to use the compact shower unit, helped her adapt Earth clothing to her slightly different proportions, and even assisted with adjusting the environmental settings to better match Elora's atmosphere. That evening, as they shared another meal of outpost rations, now creatively enhanced with spices Ethan had traded with the kitchen staff, Nadia suddenly reached across the small table and placed her hand over his. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through him. "Your kindness has meant everything to me," she said softly. "On Elora, we believe that connections formed during periods of vulnerability have special significance." Ethan looked down at their joined hands. Her purple fingers, more slender than human proportions but still with the familiar structure of 5 digits resting gently on his. "In human culture too," he said, voice slightly rough. "Shared challenges create strong bonds, and is that what this is?" she asked, her luminescent eyes searching his face. "A bond?" The question hung between them, laden with possibilities neither had fully acknowledged until this moment. Ethan turned his hand beneath hers, entwining their fingers. "I think it might be more than that," he admitted. Later, as they sat side by side on his small couch watching Earth's distant glow through the viewport, Nadia explained how Elorans expressed affection through a combination of touch, shared breath, and a subtle electromagnetic resonance. "May I show you?" she asked, a violet blush deepening her already purple complexion. Heart racing, Ethan nodded. Nadia moved closer, her face inches from his. She placed one hand on his chest over his heart and guided his hand to the same position on her body. Her heartbeat felt different, faster, with a subtle double pulse pattern. "Now we share breath," she whispered. She leaned forward, her lips almost touching his, and exhaled softly. The air carried a sweet floral scent that made Ethan's head swim pleasantly. He returned the gesture, watching as her eyes widened at this new experience. When their lips finally met, it was a culmination of everything that had built between them: curiosity, trust, and a growing affection that defied the vast differences of their origins. The kiss was tentative at first, both navigating unfamiliar territory, then deepening as they found their way together. That night, as they lay beside each other in the narrow bed, sharing stories of constellations visible from their respective homeworlds, Ethan realized that his quarters no longer felt like the isolated outpost assignment he'd resented. With Nadia there, it had become something else entirely, a place where 2 worlds converged, where differences became opportunities for discovery, rather than barriers. As she drifted to sleep beside him, her purple skin glowing faintly in the dimness, Ethan faced a truth he could no longer deny. He was falling in love with someone from another world. 3 weeks into Nadia's stay, the delicate balance of their secret arrangement began to unravel. Commander Hayes had noticed Ethan's changed behavior, his increased visits to the hydroponics bay, the unusual power fluctuations in his quarters, his tendency to eat meals alone rather than in the communal dining area. Small details, but on a lunar outpost where resources were carefully monitored and routines were essential, anomalies rarely went unnoticed. "Lieutenant Cross, a moment," Hayes called as Ethan was finishing his shift monitoring the outpost's defensive systems. Ethan's pulse quickened. "Yes, Commander. Your performance has been inconsistent lately." Hayes said, studying him with the scrutiny that had earned her the nickname Hawkeye among the crew. Distracted? Is there something I should know about? Just some personal research projects, Commander, Ethan replied, trying to keep his voice even. Nothing that interferes with my duties. Hayes leaned closer, lowering her voice. Listen, Cross, I don't care what you do in your off hours as long as it doesn't compromise this outpost. But whatever you've got hidden in your quarters is drawing unusual power signatures. Engineering flagged it yesterday. Ice formed in Ethan's stomach. I can explain. I don't want explanations, Hayes interrupted. I want compliance. Full inspection of all living quarters tomorrow at 800. Standard procedure, nothing personal. Her expression softened slightly. Whatever it is, get it sorted before then. Ethan hurried back to his quarters, mind racing through increasingly desperate scenarios. When the door slid open, he found Nadia surrounded by components from the transportation device, now partially reassembled. Ethan, I've made a breakthrough, she said excitedly, looking up with bright eyes. The dimensional calibration is almost... She stopped, noting his expression. What's wrong? He explained the situation rapidly. They'll find you tomorrow. There's no way to hide. Nadia absorbed this news with remarkable calm. Then perhaps it's time I finished my work. She gestured to the device. I've isolated the problem with the power source. With components from your communication array, I believe I can complete the repairs within hours. You mean you can go home? The words felt hollow in Ethan's mouth. Yes. Nadia stood, moving to where he remained frozen by the door. But that's not the only option. Their eyes met, and in hers, Ethan saw the same conflict he felt, the pull between duty and desire, between the lives they had known and the unexpected connection they had found. What are you saying? He asked, hardly daring to hope. I could stay, she whispered. Or, you could come with me to Elora. The magnitude of the choice hit Ethan like a physical force. Leave everything, his career, his planet, his species, for a life among aliens. Or ask Nadia to remain on a world where she would forever be an outsider, studied and possibly feared. That night, as they lay entwined in each other's arms, they spoke of possibilities. Nadia described how Ethan might be received on Elora, as a curiosity initially, but her people were generally peaceful and accepting. She held positions of respect in her scientific community. Her vouching for him would matter. But your research, your family... Ethan traced the delicate patterns that naturally occurred on her purple skin. My research would be enhanced beyond measure by what I've learned here, she countered. As for family, our connections are different from yours. We form chosen bonds rather than maintaining blood relationships throughout life. She pressed closer to him. You would be my chosen family. Ethan thought of what he would leave behind. Parents he rarely spoke with, colleagues rather than friends, a career that had become routine. Against that, he weighed the adventure of a new world, the chance to be the first human to experience an alien civilization, and most importantly, the deepening love he felt for Nadia. Or there's another way, he suggested hesitantly. I've been thinking, what if we could adapt your device, create a permanent connection between our worlds? Nadia's eyes widened. A portal? That's theoretically possible, but beyond my expertise alone. Not alone, Ethan said. Together. With your knowledge of the device and my understanding of Alliance technology, we might create something new. As dawn approached, the artificial dawn of the lunar outpost, they made their decision. They would attempt to modify the device to create a stable connection between their worlds, but first, Nadia needed to return to Elora to gather resources and prepare her people for contact. With trembling hands, they finished the repairs together, working as the clock ticked toward the morning inspection. I will return for you, Nadia promised as the device began to glow with renewed energy. Trust me, their final kiss was desperate, filled with both promise and fear. When they separated, Nadia activated the device, and in a shimmering cascade of light she vanished, just as the first notification of the upcoming inspection chimed on Ethan's communicator. He stood alone in his quarters, surrounded by the evidence of their time together, facing the most difficult hours of his life. Had he imagined it all? Would she really return? And how would he explain the alien technology left behind? As the inspection team approached his door, Lieutenant Ethan Cross made the hardest choice of all, to trust. The 3 months following Nadia's departure had been the longest of Ethan's life. The inspection had indeed discovered the alien technology in his quarters, but without Nadia present, the components appeared as little more than scavenged parts and unusual minerals. Ethan had been reprimanded for unauthorized experimentation and reassigned to maintenance duty, a demotion that might have crushed him once, but now barely registered against the ache of Nadia's absence. Each night he returned to his quarters, now regularly inspected, and continued working on the modifications they had designed together, disguising his efforts as routine electronics maintenance. He had managed to salvage key components of the transportation device before surrendering the rest to Alliance Science Division. Those essential pieces remained hidden beneath the floorboards of his quarters, awaiting Nadia's return. If she returned, doubt crept in during the silent lunar nights. Perhaps time moved differently on Elora. Perhaps she had arrived to find centuries had passed or that only moments had elapsed. Perhaps the device had malfunctioned, sending her to some unknown corner of the universe. Or perhaps, and this thought cut deepest, she had simply changed her mind about their connection once back among her own kind. Ethan was recalibrating environmental controls in the hydroponics bay when the outpost's alarms began blaring. Red emergency lights bathed the plants in an eerie glow as Commander Hayes' voice came over the communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. Unidentified energy signature detected near the east quadrant. This is not a drill. Ethan froze, his heart racing. The east quadrant directly adjacent to his quarters. Breaking protocol, he abandoned his post and raced through the corridors toward his living space. Security personnel rushed in the opposite direction, too focused on their emergency response to question his movements. When he reached his quarters, the door was already open, security override engaged. Inside, surrounded by a shimmering field of energy that held the approaching security team at bay, stood Nadia. She wasn't alone. 2 other Elorans accompanied her, their purple skin varying in shade and pattern from hers. All 3 were dressed in what appeared to be formal attire, iridescent garments that shifted color with their movements.
Ethan?
Nadia's voice cut through the chaos. The moment their eyes met, all his doubts vanished. He pushed past the security team. "Stand down. They're peaceful," he shouted, but the Alliance officers already had weapons drawn. Commander Hayes appeared at the doorway. "Lieutenant Cross, step away from the intruders immediately." "They're not intruders," Ethan countered, moving to stand beside Nadia. "They're representatives from Elora, here to establish diplomatic contact." One of Nadia's companions stepped forward, a tall, dignified Eloran with deep indigo skin. "I am Ambassador Thorin of the Eloran Council of Sciences. We come in peace, seeking formal connection between our worlds." The standoff lasted tense minutes before Hayes finally ordered her team to lower their weapons. "I need to contact Earth Alliance Command immediately," she said, never taking her eyes off the visitors. As Hayes retreated to make her call, Nadia turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with a mixture of joy and apprehension. "I promised I would return," she said softly. "It's been 3 months," he whispered. "I was beginning to wonder if—" "Time flows differently between our dimensions," she explained. "For me it has been nearly a year." She touched his face gently. "A year of convincing my council, preparing our people for contact, and modifying the device to create what we came to establish." The other Eloran, a female with lavender skin covered in swirling patterns, approached with what looked like an advanced version of the original transportation device. "This is Senna, our leading dimensional physicist," Nadia introduced her. "Together, we've created something unprecedented." The next hours passed in a blur of diplomatic chaos. Earth Alliance Command, initially skeptical, became increasingly interested as the potential benefits of contact with an advanced alien civilization became clear. Nadia and her companions presented their proposal: a permanent dimensional gateway between Earth and Elora, allowing controlled exchange of knowledge, culture, and eventually people. The location chosen for this historic gateway was fittingly Ethan's quarters, the very place where their worlds had first collided. As Alliance engineers and Eloran scientists worked together to establish the connection, Ethan and Nadia finally found a moment alone. "You risked everything coming back," Ethan said, taking her hands in his. "Why?" Nadia's luminescent eyes searched his face. "Because in all the vastness of space and time, our meeting wasn't merely chance. It was a convergence, a bridge waiting to be built." Her purple fingers tightened around his. And because I discovered something Ellerans have long theorized but rarely experienced. What's that? He asked. That love transcends dimensional boundaries, she said simply. That connection, true connection, isn't limited by physical form or planetary origin. When the gateway finally stabilized, creating a permanent bridge between Earth's lunar outpost and a secure facility on Elora, Ethan stood with Nadia at the threshold of their new shared future. Behind them, human and Eloran officials prepared for the formal ceremony that would mark this unprecedented moment in both their histories. So, Ethan asked, looking through the portal to the crystalline structures of Elora gleaming in the light of 3 distant moons, which side should we live on? Nadia's musical laugh filled the space between their worlds. Why choose? With the gateway, we belong to both worlds now. She leaned closer, sharing breath in the Eloran gesture of intimacy that had become so precious to them both. Or rather, we've created our own world, one that exists in the space between stars. As they stood at the junction of 2 civilizations, their joined hands formed the most meaningful bridge of all, a connection between 2 beings who had defied the vast emptiness of space to find each other. Through them, 2 planets separated by unimaginable distances would begin a journey toward understanding that neither could have imagined alone. And in that moment, as representatives from Earth and Elora prepared to take their first steps across the dimensional threshold, Ethan and Nadia knew with certainty that their accidental encounter had never been an accident at all, but rather the universe's way of bringing together 2 worlds that were always meant to find each other.